Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Let's get after it.
The yearly Carnival in Brazil just happened, and if you remember my video from last year, it was probably the most demonic and blasphemous thing you have ever seen. People who saw that video couldn't even believe their own eyes. I mean, the floats, Jesus being dragged on the floor, demons elevating from graves, I mean, the list goes on. And this year, it was a lot of the same. Something that I noticed this year is that it was very hard to find footage of the actual carnival. I spent hours watching live streams on YouTube and compiled all of the clips that I could find. Now, I'm sure a lot of these floats represent cultural traditions, but some of these things just went too far, like Jesus Christ being tripped up and tossed around by people in devil horns, a float that literally looks like an Illuminati float, and I have no idea what this is, but if anyone has an idea, please let me know. One thing I did notice is that there were snakes and serpent on like every other float, but it wasn't as bad as last year. Maybe the flood that they got the weekend after made them want to tone things down a little bit, but still the energy at this carnival every year just looks so dark to me, and I just don't understand how there's so many people there celebrating it.
Now, I never saw the video of the Brazilian carnival from last year, but if it looked anything like this, and they're saying that this year it's been toned down, it's pretty obvious who they're celebrating. They're definitely not celebrating Christianity or anything good.
It was the presence of the entities that shattered the person who I was, because I was a scientific rationalist, a reductionist. I had no room for elves in my cosmology. And here they were, hundreds of them. But this is the question that must be asked. Who's in there? Who is this? The first possibility is that we don't understand how the world is constructed, and that, in fact, there is a parallel universe running alongside of ours, full of elves who use a language to make objects. Well, clearly, these are just extraterrestrials. They don't come in silver ships demanding to be taken to the National Defense Agency. This is how they come. Why they come this way, who knows? They're coming through mind. Mind is the medium in which they travel. Where do they come from? Who knows? Can it even be located in the Newtonian space-time matrix? I mean, what do you want here? A star catalog number? Would that satisfy you?
I kind of like the idea that he's getting to there, that these are like creatures from a different dimension that travel through our mind, and that's how they get to where we're at. But are we not also traveling through our mind to get to where they are? Maybe they exist on their plane and we're the aliens.
Can you give me an example of a food that's a vaccine?
You recognize?
Yes. University of California, Riverside has already perfected the ability to put human vaccines into our lettuce right now. Also tomatoes has the ability to do that also for UC Berkeley. And then Big Tobacco, RJ Reynolds and stuff, has perfected the ability to put a human vaccine into tobacco products.
Chairman Clements?
And is that even legal to do in the state of Tennessee, to sell those with a vaccine in them?
You recognize?
Well, I'm not arguing that point. What I'm saying is there is no law deeming those that when you go into a grocery store, you should know as a consumer, this head of lettuce is a head of lettuce. The head of lettuce right next to it could contain a vaccine in it. All we're saying is if it does have the vaccine in it, make sure it's listed as a pharmaceutical so people can get the proper dosage.
And my question is right now, can you walk into a grocery store and there be a head of lettuce for sale that has a vaccine in it? I don't think that's allowed under state law presently. And if it is, and you have to list it as a pharmaceutical, are we going to then have Walgreens pharmacists with a refrigerated section? I mean, how's this going to play out?
You recognize?
Thank you. This is more of a consumer protection bill right here, is to make sure that if you're going in to buy tomatoes and there's a polio vaccine in there, that you are aware of what you're buying has a polio vaccine. The problem you have is if it's not treated as a pharmaceutical, being the size and difference between you and me, how many tomatoes do I have to eat to get the proper dosage versus how many tomatoes that you have to eat? And if you eat too many, do you get a overdose? If you eat too less, like we had in the cattle industry with Aromycin, we weren't dosing our cattle properly, and the horn flies were developing an immunity to it. If we don't have the proper dosage of a vaccine, it could lead to the efficacy of that drug not work anymore.
You recognize?
Well, I'd like to think I'm more immune to horn flies than you are, but I say that jokingly.
No,
but
you don't.
right
No, you
now,
don't.
my question is just, is there a need for this? I understand there's a concern, and yeah, people should know if there's a vaccine in food. But if we can't even sell food with vaccines in it in the state of Tennessee right now, then is this legislation necessary, is my question.
Well, if you have a child that is allergic to a certain vaccine and it's not disclosed when you go to buy that vegetable or whatever it is, and your child dies from that, I would think that having something in place that's going to make sure that that is treated as a pharmaceutical so that the consumers know exactly what they're buying.
It's scary to think having fluoride in our drinking water wasn't enough. That's not enough poison to pump out into the general population. They've got to start putting all this crap into our food and stuff. You can't even go to the grocery store and buy organic produce anymore and know if it hasn't been tampered with. It's pathetic.
Bill Gates said if we do good with vaccinations, we can lower the population by 10 to 15%. How many of you guys got the vaccination in this line? Raise your hand. God bless you guys. Hopefully you guys do well.
I don't know that. I just think that's funny. Not making any comment on the vaccines or anything, but that's funny. Because that was the safest, most effective vaccine ever created by man. Hey, if you're enjoying this video, I make a new one just like it every single day. It'd be awesome if you'd hit that subscribe button and come back tomorrow to join me.
I would not be stunned, surprised to find out the Russians notified Washington that they've placed a nuclear weapon, a warhead in space, hovering over North America that's capable of delivering an electromagnetic pulse attack over North America. You don't blow up satellites with nukes. That's crazy. It would be the worst nightmare, folks. You'd be better off to be incinerated with a nuclear warhead than to live after an EMP attack. Why do I say that? Because you're still alive, but there's no life. You're back to the 1600s. No technology at all. Nothing. No way to pump water, no electricity, no utilities of any kind, no food, no transportation, no trucks hauling food, no farmers, tractors not moving, nothing. No food processing companies still operating.
Someone wrote me over the weekend saying, well, I'll have solar panels and everything. I'll have electricity. I said, no, you won't, because
all your gadgets will be fried.
Well, but the circuit boards that process the electrical from the solar panel to your household grid, they're fried.
Yes, and all your gadgets in your house are fried.
Yeah.
Everything electrical is fried. You're not fried. The gadgets are fried. Well, you think, well, we'll get it fixed. Well, how are you going to fix it when nothing works?
And guess where all the circuit boards and transformers
From China.
Yes.
Our electrical grid can't be fixed because all the parts come from China. And China's just going to sit back and watch us starve. Years ago, James Woolsey, former CIA director, told me, and this was a personal conversation I had with him, he said that within 1 year, 90% of the American people would be dead. Not from the blast, but from the implosion of society. The lack of food, the lack of water, the lack of medical care, the lack of heat, just the chaos, the crime. The CIA expects 90% of the population to die within 12 months after an EMP attack. That's what I think the Russians have threatened to deliver to the United States. It'll be the worst nightmare. You don't want to live in that world. And there's no way out. There's no place to go. Canada's going to be taken out. Mexico's going to be taken out. Where are you going to go? You're going to walk on foot? What are you going to eat? What are you going to drink? How long can you walk to get to South America? This is the nightmare that we would have.
Yes, the one thing that's kind of preserved the North American continent for now centuries is the fact that we've got two great big oceans on both sides of the continent. That's kind of protected us. But in an EMP, it becomes our prison.
Yes, we're boxed in.
We can't go anywhere.
We don't have any place to go.
And this stuff's on the forefront of my mind after yesterday. We had T-Mobile, Verizon, all these different cell service providers all went down, but it wasn't nationwide. It was only sporadic throughout. I still had service. My wife still had service. Other people we know in the area with Verizon, which is what we use, they didn't have service. So it was sporadic, but the people that didn't have it were in a complete panic. Now, like I said, I had it, so I didn't even have the opportunity to go into a panic. would like to think that I wouldn't have, but the people, I saw people posting videos talking about like acting like their life was over because their phone service was out and they didn't know when it was going to come back up. Yeah, people aren't going to do good when a real EMP hits. We're going to be screwed.
If you go to the deep state machine called Google and type in the 5 elements, you will never find the ether. Because they decided to hide the 5th element. 5 fingers, 5 elements. 5 points on the body, 5 elements. The ether represents the middle finger. They then demonized the middle finger and considered it swearing. All of this was done to hide the 5th element. Why is it that they want to hide the ether so much? The ether is an ever-present field connecting all things. It fills every millimeter with boundless free energy, acting as a fundamental substance giving rise to all physical matter. Maybe this is why all of the ancient buildings all had antennas on, because they were harnessing free energy. The ether serves as a connecting medium between the physical plane and the astral plane, the spirit realm. This is why the word together has ether in it. Together, the two worlds joined together. The ether is both physical and spiritual. It's on either side. Ether is the gateway to the other side of reality, the astral plane. So by hiding the ether, they trapped us all in thinking we are all physical beings and the universe is all physical, when in fact you have a body for every single one of these dimensions. You have an etheric, astral, mental and physical body. Astral projection is the proof of this. This is why we say think outside the box. The box is the physical world. The triangle represents the ethereal plane.
Sending y'all some ethereal love right now. So we just learned the other day that our physical body, although it is a physical object, never comes into actual contact, any physical contact with another object, because you're just feeling the force of that object up against your skin. You're not actually touching it because the atoms never get close enough to make contact. So it would make sense to me to look at things this way, that the body is a form of a prison, and that your mind and yourself is trapped inside of it, and that through different means like meditation and things like that, you can escape and get out of that prison and experience your true self.
For the prophets that wrote the Bible write about the cosmology, are biblical scholars holding an unfair bias when they say that the book does not talk about the geocentric topographical plane? You'll hear a lot of people say the Bible's not a science book. But I beg to differ. It is very scientifically accurate. Think about Deuteronomy 22:11. Thou shalt not wear a garment of diverse sorts, as of wool and linen together. A lot of people would say that this makes no sense, and it is just some type of unreasonable rule. What if I were to tell you that there's science behind it? Yes, our bodies resonate at 100 megahertz. And if you wear wool by itself, that's raising it by 5,000 megahertz. If you wear linen by itself, you're raising it by 5,000 megahertz. But what happens when you mix those two together? Well, they cancel each other out, putting that megahertz at 0. So in this world that we live in, it's all about frequency. And if we find out just how literal the Bible was, what if we could live a lot longer, just like the people back in the Bible days? They lived for hundreds of years. Maybe it's because they promoted a healthy lifestyle and harnessed all the frequencies that God has placed in this model. Now, is this why plain wool t-shirts are so dang expensive? So were the prophets that heard from the Almighty right about the cosmology, about the frequency and everything else?
I think that's fascinating, and the more we dig into these videos and find stuff on frequency, the more I feel like the pieces are slowly coming together. I think it's the answer to everything, which I'm just some dude watching, conspiracy videos on the internet. Greater minds than mine think that frequency is the key to everything. Nikola Tesla, even though he's considered a genius, I still think he's highly underrated. This makes me want to go read the Bible and see if I can find some more rules like this. Like I wonder, the whole don't eat pork that's in the Old Testament. I wonder if pork has certain frequency or something that's negative or harmful to the body. It'd be interesting to find out.
Termites chew on wood and they swallow it, but termites can't digest it. It goes into their stomach, and there's little tiny critters in their intestines that actually digest the cellulose. Now, those little critters can't live without the termite, and those termites can't live without those critters. Which one evolved first? So I asked this professor if I could ask him some questions about the Big Bang. I said, well, sir, you told me 20 billion years ago all the matter in the universe was squished in this little tiny dot, and it was spinning faster and faster and exploded. I said, where did all this matter come from? He said, well, we don't know that for sure. I said, okay, now, sir, hold it. If I told you that I believe about 6,000 years ago God created the heaven and the earth like the Bible teaches, you're going to say, and where did God come from? And I don't know. But you said 20 billion years ago there was a big bang, and you don't know where the dirt came from. So basically, I believe in the beginning God, and you believe in the beginning dirt. Don't tell me my theory is religious and yours is science. Oh, no, sir, they're both religious.
I see it all as religious myself. I like the idea of science. I like the idea of a religion. If it's done well, I think it could be very beneficial to a large group of people. But being somebody who is so hardwired to look for evidence and proof and not buy into anything without that evidence, it's really hard for me to choose a religion, Christianity or science, and say, I believe in this one. There's just too many unknowns. And, for the exact same reason that I don't consider myself a Christian, but a fence sitter, is the same reasons I don't consider myself a believer of science. There's too many unknowns. There's too many questions that can't be answered. But the one thing that science has working against it is that the unanswered questions of science can't be answered, even though there's hundreds of thousands of scientists that are actively working on trying to figure out the answers to these questions. They still can't tell us where the universe came from, how the pyramids were built. They can't prove to us that we can get to the moon. There's just too many unknowns in science for me to just believe everything they come out with on face value. And of course, the pandemic really turned me off from a lot of scientists.
There's a lot about the Great Pyramid which suggests that it was intended to transmit information to the future. And that's one of the reasons why it incorporates the dimensions of the Earth on a particular scale, that you can take the height of the Great Pyramid and multiply by 43,200 and you get the polar radius of the Earth. You can measure the base perimeter of the Great Pyramid, multiply it by the same number, you get the equatorial circumference of the Earth. That number is not a random number.
Those key numbers measure time today. 24 hours times 60 means there's 86,400 seconds. On vernal equinox, period of time of darkness and of light are exactly equal, 43,200 seconds. That number is the scaling ratio of the pyramid.
So the Great Pyramid is gradually, bit by bit, revealing its secrets, and it's almost as though it was waiting for a time when human beings were ready to receive those secrets and had the ability to decode them.
I'm ready. I don't know what they're waiting on. Yeah, I hope he's right, because that would mean that one day we probably will figure out how these things were built and what they were for. I hope that his theory is correct, because if it's some sort of device that's supposed to send information into the future for us to one day accept whenever we're at the right maturity level or whatever degree it is that they're basing that on, it'd be fascinating if he's correct. But I'm still convinced that there was some sort of energy producing device. Not necessarily anything, I don't have a theory as to what they were producing energy for, but they look like huge generators. So until somebody shows me some information that points me in a different direction that looks more likely like it was used for something else, that's just my theory. That's just where I sit currently.
I've never seen so much dark symbolism during a Super Bowl in my entire life. Rihanna throws on a bright red dress and just throws up the Illuminati sign in front of everyone. I mean, the platform she was on was literally shaped as a triangle as well. They all wear and do the same thing. Sam Smith and The Weeknd with some of the most satanic performances ever. Lizzo with a literal 6 on her head. Doja Cat and all these other artists. You guys get it yet? And what the heck was this? There's absolutely no way she just sniffed her finger after this. I break down the whole thing on YouTube, but let's get into some other things that didn't sit right with me at the Super Bowl. Damar Hamlin, after the whole world prays for you, you come out with a blasphemous jacket making Jesus Christ on the cross looking like a clown or a zombie. I mean, just read what it says in the front of the jacket. I mean, even AP called it blasphemous. And he's throwing up the 6s with LeBron, and he's getting new tattoos on his hand. I seen Travis Scott wearing the same thing on a chain, and don't you dare call that art. Uzi at the Super Bowl doing the same thing. All of them just making fun of Jesus. Riri, you ain't off the hook either, pulling up in an upside down cross saying control minds. And don't even get me started with the commercials. This was the worst part of it all.
I've said it once and I'll say it again. Even if I don't believe this religion stuff is real, there's a lot of people out there that do, and they're actively fighting on the wrong side of things. What do they say? If enough people believe something's true, they can think it into existence. There's certainly enough people out there fighting on the side of good, and definitely enough people fighting on the side of evil to make this religion thing true. I know I said I'm on the fence, but I feel the tug from time to time. Just not there yet. But seeing stuff like this really makes me think.
A friend of mine in Oregon here has a hyperbaric chamber. He said, Kent, you want to try it? I said, yeah. He put me in there and pumped it up to triple normal pressure for an hour. I'm breathing pressurized oxygen, triple the pressure. After an hour, he let me out. He said, how do you feel? I said, I feel like going jogging. Let's go run around the world. It was weird. Just a hyperbaric chamber. A friend of mine in Gillette, Wyoming has a hyperbaric sleeping bag. He said, you want to try it? I said, yeah. He put me in there, zipped it shut, put me in there for about an hour. Man, it's amazing what extra oxygen will do. A guy named Kei Mori, Keio University in Tokyo, started raising tomato plants. All he did was filter the sunlight so that the light was not giving any ultraviolet or any X-rays, just pure light. He did not pressurize the air. He did not give it increased CO2, just simply filtered sunlight. His tomato plant grew 16 feet tall and produced 900 tomatoes on one plant. It kept growing and growing. They moved it to a shopping center, built scaffolding to hold up the branches. They said this thing might produce 10,000 tomatoes. Well, the last I heard, it actually produced 15,000 tomatoes and grew 40 feet tall, a tomato tree. Now his tomatoes, they were cherry tomatoes, but they came off baseball size. That was just filtered sunlight. Had he increased air pressure and more CO2, no telling what it would do. They've discovered under the leaf, under every leaf of a plant, well, this is a fake one, but under the leaves, you'll see, if you get a magnifying glass, little tiny holes called stomata. You kids will study that in biology class. The stomata close up at night, open in the daylight to let the air circulate in and out of the plant. That's how the plants breathe, through the stomata under the leaf. They've discovered the chirping sound that birds make at 4 in the morning opens the stomata. You ever wonder, why are the birds out there chirping at 4 in the morning? Go to bed. Oh no, they're doing their job. They open up the stomata under the leaf. One guy got curious about this, so he found out that the chirping of the birds can be mimicked with classical music. This guy in Iowa started playing classical music to his cornfield. His neighbors thought, half a bubble off a plum, maybe, till his corn grew 15 feet tall. They said, what channel was that you're listening to? I think the pre-flood world had greater air pressure, increased CO2, filtered sunlight, the music of the stars. It was designed for everything to grow phenomenal size. Walnut trees grow twice as fast if you just simply play classical music to them, is what he said. Cantaloupe as big as soccer balls can be raised.
And I think that this right here is a good explanation as to how people grew so big pre-flood times and why we had giants, because I'm completely convinced that there were giants. I know for a fact that we had some dude that was almost 9 foot tall that was around during the time of video, because I've seen the video footage of him. I think it was back in the 50s or something. But if everything else grew to be bigger pre-flood times because of the oxygen levels, because of the sun being filtered, although I didn't catch an explainer on what was filtering the sunlight in pre-flood times, so unless he's saying, oh, that was the firmament and it's no longer there. But with all those things combined, it would only make sense that if everything else was caused to get bigger, trees, vegetation, bugs, because we know that there were huge bugs back in like prehistoric times and stuff, why wouldn't people be huge? Everything else got bigger, it only makes sense that people got bigger as well. But guys, I'm going to go ahead and call the video there. I hope you enjoyed these clips that we watched together today, and I will be back tomorrow with another video. I hope you come back to join me. I hope you have a great, safe, fantastic day, and I will see you tomorrow.